A week before my mother's memorial, I saw the collage my stepmother Brenda had made and stopped at one Christmas photo. In the original, Mom sat between my brother and me, holding both our hands. Brenda had cropped me out, leaving Mom's hand reaching toward the edge of the frame. She said I appeared too often and she was trying to keep the display balanced. Then she asked if I had finished scanning and labeling Mom's last photo box. I told her no, and I would not be finishing her photo work. Her printer deadline was 3 days away. Full script Brenda stared at me like she thought I had misunderstood the question. "You're not going to scan the box? Not for this collage." She looked back at the display spread across her dining room table. There were empty spaces where she had planned to add new pictures. A few of the images already printed were phone photos of old prints, soft and grainy. 2 captions had question marks after the year because Brenda did not know when they were taken. She said, "Claire, I was counting on those. I need to send the final file by Friday." I told her she could finish the display with the material she already had or ask other relatives for more. I had never promised to digitize the entire box by her deadline. I had agreed to help. Brenda folded her arms. "So because you don't like one crop, now I have to redo the whole thing? It isn't one crop. There were other choices I disliked, but I pointed only to the Christmas picture. You took a photo of Mom with both her children and made it a photo of Mom with one child. Then you asked the child you removed to spend the week identifying the rest of her life for you." Her face changed at that. Not guilt exactly. More like she thought I was making 2 unrelated things sound connected. She said the same thing again about balance. I had more pictures with Mom than my brother did. If Brenda used everything I had originally suggested, she said, it'll look like Susan only had one child. That part hurt because it was not entirely wrong. My mother had died 4 months earlier after an illness that was serious but not dramatic. My parents had been divorced for years. Dad later married Brenda, and by the time my brother and I were adults, everyone had reached the kind of civility where birthdays and graduations did not require separate seating charts. Brenda was never close to Mom, but she knew her. When we decided to have a small remembrance gathering around Mom's birthday for relatives who had missed the funeral, Brenda volunteered to make the photo display. She is organized, good with layouts, and the kind of person who owns labeled storage bins for wrapping paper. I was grateful. I was also the reason there were so many digitized photos to choose from. About a year before Mom died, I had started scanning old family pictures for her. I own a decent flatbed photo scanner because I like old photos and wanted backups before the prints faded anymore. Mom would sit beside me with coffee and tell me who people were, roughly what year something happened, and which stories I had heard wrong my entire life. After we cleared her apartment, 1 cardboard box was left. I took it home and put it in the bottom of my hall closet. I had not opened it since. Until Brenda asked for it, I could pretend it was just another unfinished project. On the drive home from Dad's house, I kept thinking about that Christmas picture. Mom was wearing a red sweater. My brother was sitting on the arm of the couch. I was kneeling beside her because there was nowhere else to sit, and Mom had reached down and caught my hand right as the picture was taken. In Brenda's crop, my hand was gone. Mom's was still there. I hated how much that bothered me. It felt childish to care about 6 inches at the side of a photograph when we were supposed to be remembering an entire person. And Brenda had a legitimate problem. I lived closer to Mom. I took more pictures. There really were more surviving images of the 2 of us together. So that night, I called my brother and told him I needed a sanity check. He came over the next evening. I showed him the original Christmas photo on my laptop, then the version Brenda had printed. He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "There are definitely more pictures of you and Mom. I know, and I get why she doesn't want the whole wall to be you too. I know that too." He looked back at the cropped version. But I wouldn't want her cutting me out of that picture either. That was all he said about Brenda. Then he surprised me by asking if he could choose a few pictures himself. He admitted he had mostly left the photo project to me because I was already doing it. I realized I had done something similar with the memorial. Nobody had appointed me keeper of Mom's history. I had grabbed the work because work was easier than grief. For about an hour, I seriously considered giving Brenda the box anyway. I could scan everything, send it, get through the memorial, and argue about the crop later like Dad wanted. Because Dad did call. He said Brenda was upset and reminded me she had already spent days building the display. "Can't we just finish the memorial and talk about this afterward?" he asked. I said, "She can finish it. I'm just not finishing it for her." He sighed. He did not tell me I was wrong. He also did not tell Brenda she was wrong. That was Dad's favorite kind of peace. 2 mornings later, I pulled Mom's last photo box out of the closet, not because Brenda needed it. Because I did not want my last relationship with that box to be an argument. I put one photograph on the scanner, then another. Most of them were completely ordinary. Mom asleep on the couch with a paper Christmas crown sliding over one eye. My brother making an awful face behind a birthday cake. Mom and her sister shoulder to shoulder at a kitchen sink. A blurry backyard picture where half the people were looking the wrong direction. There were also pictures I could not identify. I labeled those honestly instead of guessing. One older photo showed Mom at her college graduation with her parents and an older man standing beside my grandfather. I remembered that one because Mom had corrected me years earlier. The man was her uncle, not a family friend, and the photo had been taken after the graduation ceremony, not at a reunion like I had assumed. I scanned it and kept going. By that afternoon, the box had changed for me. It was still sad, but it was no longer a deadline sitting in my closet. I made folders for my brother and me. When he asked for the ridiculous birthday cake picture, I sent it. When Mom's sister asked whether I had found the kitchen photo, I sent that too. I was not keeping Mom from anyone. I just stopped acting like Brenda had unlimited access to my time because she was making the display. Brenda found other sources. She asked relatives to send whatever photos they had. My brother gave her 3 he had chosen himself. Mom's sister helped answer questions about some of the older people, and Brenda still managed most of the memorial without me doing everything. That mattered. I did not want the lesson to be that nobody could preserve Mom unless I did it. They could. Some of Brenda's choices were good. One picture I had been annoyed she removed was honestly redundant once I saw the full layout. But getting other people involved changed the project. My brother was no longer just whatever photos Brenda selected for him. Mom's sister was not just a name Brenda needed me to identify. People were starting to speak for their own memories instead of handing Brenda one giant pile and letting her decide what the finished story should look like. The day before the printer deadline, Brenda called me. She sounded more tired than angry. "I have one question," she said. "Your aunt said you might know." She described an older graduation photo, Susan in a light dress, her parents beside her, an older man on the end. Brenda had been told 2 different names and 2 different occasions. She did not want to print the wrong caption under a picture that mattered to Mom's side of the family. I knew exactly which photo she meant. I told her who the man was and that it was Mom's college graduation. Then I said I had a cleaner scan if she wanted that specific image. There was a pause. "Yes," she said. "Please." I emailed it. A few minutes later, she called again. "If you already have the box open, could you just send me the rest of the scans tonight? I can make the selections." For a second, I almost said yes out of habit. The box was already open. The scanner was already on. Mom mattered more to me than this argument ever would. And that was exactly why Brenda had assumed I would eventually do it. I said, "No. If there's another specific photo you need, ask me. I'm happy to help with something I know. I'm not handing over the whole box for you to edit." Brenda went quiet. Then she said, "I still think you're taking the balance issue personally. I am taking the Christmas picture personally." She exhaled. "Fine, I'll work with what I have." And she did. After that, she stopped asking me for batches of pictures. She sent my brother part of the proof and asked which photos of him and Mom he actually wanted included. Mom's sister checked the captions on several older pictures instead of having me guess for everyone. The display got a little smaller. It also got more honest. The memorial itself was warm and a little awkward, which was probably the most accurate version of our family at that point. People brought food. One of Mom's old friends told a story that was much funnier than the polished ones we had prepared. My aunt cried over the kitchen photo because she remembered the ugly wallpaper behind them. Then I walked over to the finished display. The Christmas picture was there, uncropped. Mom sat in the middle, my brother on one side, me on the other, her hands reaching toward both of us. Nearby was the graduation photo from the last box with the correct caption. There were fewer pictures overall than Brenda had originally planned. My brother had picked several of his own. My aunt had supplied context for 2 older ones. A couple were left without exact years because nobody knew and nobody pretended otherwise. Brenda came up beside me while I was looking. She said, "I should have asked before I cropped that one." I said, "Yeah." Then she added, "I still think the display needed balancing." I know. That was as close as we got to agreement. Several months later, Dad wanted a digital folder of Mom's pictures for my brother's birthday. Brenda texted me instead of assigning me a task. She wrote, "Do you have any pictures from the box you'd be comfortable sharing?" I noticed the wording immediately. I chose 6 and sent them. She did not ask for the rest. By then I had finished scanning the whole box on my own schedule. Some files have names and dates. Some still say unknown. The cardboard box itself is closed on a shelf now, and I do not feel guilty when I walk past it. It stopped being Brenda's unfinished memorial job a long time ago.